The show opens up as a woman, June Osborne, her husband, Luke Bankole, and their daughter, Hannah, speed on backroads while sirens howl in the background. They are attempting to flee towards the Canadian border. When the car skids off the road, Luke tells them to run while he stays behind. But June doesn't get far before a gunshot rings out behind them. She freezes for a while, then picks up her little girl and keeps moving forward. The pair hide and try to keep quiet while two gunmen stand inches away from them. Initially, the mother and daughter get away, but they don't make it all the way to the border. The armed men rip Hannah from her mother's arm, who is knocked out and loaded into the back of a van. The next scene takes us to the present day in the fictional nation of Gilead. June Osborne is sitting in her small room in the home of her owner, Commander Waterford. Through a voice-over, she explains that the glass in the room is shatterproof to prevent her from attempting suicide. She then reveals that her new and only permissible name is Offred. In this world, the government of the United States is overthrown after a civil war. A totalitarian government then establishes a completely new nation named Gilead. All the fertile women like June, called handmaids, are forced into childbearing servitude for the ruling elite men, called commanders, and their barren wives. Handmaids aren't allowed to go anywhere alone, to read, or to have a life of their own choosing. Offred lives in the household of Commander Fred Waterford and his wife, Serena Joy, who is cold and unkind towards our main character. Later, Offred goes down to the kitchen, where she meets a domestic worker named Rita. In Gilead, all women who cook and clean have the same name, Martha. While the handmaids wear red dresses with white bonnets, the Marthas wear green dresses, and the wives wear blue. Following this, Rita sends Offred out to do the day's shopping, and gives her vouchers with pictures. Outside, she greets a low-level official, Nick Blaine, who is assigned to the Waterford household as a driver. Offred isn't sure whether he genuinely cares about her or is simply spying on her. Soon, she joins another handmaid, Ofglin, for her grocery trip. Handmaids are forced to travel in pairs, not for their protection but so the women can keep an eye on one another. On their way to the grocery store, Offred has a cautious, cagey conversation with the other handmaid. The chit-chat is limited to innocuous things like the weather and updates on an ongoing war against the rebels. After the grocery store stop, they take a route that takes them past a wall where people are hung for treasonous acts. Their heads are covered by bags that depict their crimes. There's a priest, a doctor, and a gay man. A flashback scene takes us inside Offred's first class at the Rachel and Lee Center. It once used to be a high school but was turned into a re-education center where women are indoctrinated into their handmaid roles. There, brown-clad older women, called aunts, spin stories about how the previous society messed everything up. A particularly mean Aunt Lydia explains how the plague of infertility was caused by sexual deviancy and pollution. She then adds that fertility is a gift directly from God, and hence, the handmaids serve a biblical purpose. At that moment, a bewildered Offred is marched into the classroom. Immediately, she sees someone she knows, Moira, a free-spirited friend she knew before Gilead. Moira faintly shakes her head side to side so Offred won't reveal that they know each other. During the class, another student, Janine, talks back and scoffs at the teachings. In response, Lydia shocks her with a cattle prod and has her taken away. The mean matron then warns the rest of the class to simply adjust to the new surroundings, and tells them that things will seem normal after a few months. At night in the center, June and Moira are awake whispering when Janine is brought back crying. We see what happens to those who disobey. One of her eyes is gone. Even worse, the next day in class, she is forced to tell everyone about being sexually assaulted by a group of men. Aunt Lydia then asks her classmates as to whose fault this was. In unison, the women point their fingers at Janine and chant that it was her fault. When a stunned June doesn't join in, she's slapped by another aunt before Lydia poses the next question: what should happen to Janine? June joins in the group shaming that chants to teach her a lesson. In the present, Offred participates in another necessity of her new life, a ritualistic impregnation called the ceremony. Here, the commander tries to impregnate a handmaid as she lies on his wife's lap. It is a joyless act for everyone involved. Offred lays belly up, completely emotionless, while Serena Joy has a deep contempt on her face. That night, Offred bolts out of bed and into the backyard, desperate for air. But that brief moment of release is halted when she realizes that Nick can see her. She then gathers herself up and goes back to her room. The following morning, she worries about whether Nick has told anyone she was outside. Suddenly, she hears a series of bells signaling another chilling ritual in this new world called salvaging. All the handmaids gather in an open field, and a man is brought out before them. According to Aunt Lydia, the man assaulted a pregnant handmaid and caused her to lose the baby. They're told to stand around him and do whatever they choose to him. When the starting whistle blows, the women unleash the rage they have collected because of their prisoner-styled life. Offred lands the first blow, followed by the other women who descend, screaming, grabbing, pulling, and kicking. Only Janine, clutching her now pregnant belly, watches from a few feet away, twirling happily in the sun. When it's over, Offred and Ofglin walk home together, and finally begin to see each other clearly. They talk about Moira, who Janine claimed was captured and sent to the labor camps named colonies. They also talk about Offred's husband and daughter and Ofglin's wife and son, who were lucky enough to escape to Canada. They stop in front of the commander's home and remark how it was nice to finally meet each other. But as Offred goes to close the gate, her new friend leans in and whispers that there's a spy in her house. As our main character walks into a home where anyone and everyone could be watching her, she plans to persist. She then declares the names of her family to herself as a battle cry. The next scene brings us to another ceremony night, where Offred, her commander, and his wife try to make a baby again. That morning, the handmaid goes outside to meet Ofglin and greets her with a hi, which is uncommon in this world. Ofglin replies with a stoic greeting because Nick is outside. The ladies aren't sure if he is a spy or not. After their shopping, they take another long walk home past the wall where more traitorous bodies are being strung up. Here, the two exchange more information about themselves. Offred is originally from Brookline, Massachusetts, and was a book editor in her former life. On the other hand, Ofglin is originally from Montana, came to New England for school, and then worked at a university. The former is surprised, noting that most academics were sent to the colonies, but Ofglin says she was spared that fate thanks to her functioning ovaries. They pass a demolition site of a church where Offred had baptized her daughter. Her friend adds that the Gilead government also demolished the St. Patrick's Church in New York and dumped the debris in the Hudson River. At this point, it is clear that the totalitarian government wants to destroy artifacts of the civilization that came before. Suddenly, a black van comes speeding down the street. Two men clad in black emerge and grab a pedestrian with a briefcase, shut the doors, and drive away. The two onlooking handmaids know that the man will never be seen again. Later, Ofglin reveals she is a part of some sort of resistance movement against the government, and invites Offred to join. The latter hesitates, saying she's not that kind of person. However, her friend adds that Waterford is an important figure, and anything she can discover about him could be substantial. The prospect of a secret resistance against this brutal regime roots Offred on the spot even as it starts raining. Through her internal monologue, we learn more about the world now. There's fighting in Chicago. Anchorage is the capital of what's left of the US, and that flag only flies 2 stars. Back in the house, Nick is waiting in the kitchen with a message. The commander wants to see her alone in his office tonight. The driver then leaves her with a warning not to trust Ofglin. Later in her room, the handmaid tries to nervously guess why she has been summoned. Before she can contemplate it much further, a red van pulls outside, sirens blaring. It is the birthmobile, a vehicle which has come to collect her and the other local handmaids to witness one of their own giving birth. The mother-to-be is Janine, who now goes by the name Offwarren. During the trip to the hospital, Offred wonders what kind of defective baby she will give birth to. In Gilead, the chances of a healthy baby are 1 in 5, if they can get pregnant at all. This takes Offred back to the day when her water broke. The hospital was eerily lined outside with people praying. In Offwarren's home, there's soft music playing and a Martha laying out a spread of food that includes a macaron tower. The wives, all clad in blue, are leading the commander's wife through a fake labor. Among the attendees is Serena Joy, who is holding her hand. Upstairs, there's an actual labor happening. Here, several handmaids and a pair of aunts collectively chant to breathe, hold and exhale, surrounding a bed holding the actual mother-to-be. Touching Janine's belly reminds Offred of newborn Hannah, her tiny feet and baby smell. In a flashback, we see the hospital nursery is full of empty bassinets. Later, Offred wakes up, and her daughter isn't sleeping beside her, and Luke doesn't have her either. Suddenly, an alarm goes off, and she sees a nurse dead on the floor. Panicked, they run around when another woman walks by, clutching the infant Hannah and referring to it as her baby. The woman is shocked by the death of her baby and refuses to believe it. Thankfully, Luke and the police corner her, and safely get Hannah back. The woman is then pulled to the floor and arrested. In the present day, Offred gets a few moments alone with Ofglin and tells her about Waterford's request. However, Serena Joy pulls her into the dining room with some of the wives. One of the other wives asks Offred if she'd like a cookie, like a child or a puppy. Serena Joy pulls a pink macaron off the display and hands it to her, much to the amusement of the other wives. Offred then walks off and spits out the bite she took in a bathroom sink. When it's time for Offwarren to push, Aunt Lydia directs her to a chair. Offwarren's mistress is brought upstairs to sit behind her, continuing the farce of birthing this baby herself. She then gives birth to a baby girl, a tiny miracle that everyone is elated over. The wife gets into bed surrounded by the other wives, and the baby is taken to her, not Offwarren, who is consoled by the other handmaids. She gets to spend time with her daughter only when she has to feed her breast milk. The ride back in the birthmobile is silent. People are exhausted, contemplating the consequences of not being able to conceive. Meanwhile, Ofglin tells her friend that no one knows what Commander Waterford might want from Offred. She tells her not to trust Nick, and her friend replies that Nick said the same about her. Surprisingly, Ofglin admits that trusting anyone is dangerous. That night, our main character sets off for Commander Waterford's private chambers, where women aren't allowed in without permission. This reminds her of horror movies, where a woman would descend unwittingly into a basement to meet her death. When she knocks and enters, it looks like a standard office, books everywhere, a globe in the corner, and a wooden desk. Although she is not supposed to make eye contact with him, he encourages her to look straight into his eyes. The commander then informs her that he wants to play a game of Scrabble. This is a dangerous proposal in Gilead since women aren't supposed to read. Later, when they finish, their scores are within 3 points of each other, which impresses Commander Waterford. He suggests they have a rematch after he returns from a trip to Washington, to which she reluctantly agrees. The commander then walks her to the door, and they shake hands before leaving. Safely back in her room with the door shut, she can't help but laugh, a stunned laugh, as she made it back alive. The next day, encouraged by the night's outcome, she has a spring in her step. She is happy that she has some intel to share with Ofglin. As she goes to step out for the day's shopping, she walks past Nick and heads to the gate. But when she opens the gate, there is another woman waiting for her instead of her friend. This new handmaid offers a smile, and the standard Gilead greeting. In the final scene, Offred tries to casually inquire about what happened to Ofglin. In response, she is met with a stony answer from the new handmaiden, that she is now Ofglin. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave 1,000 likes or 100 comments if you'd like us to continue part 2. Thank you.